You sure you don't want to stall anymore?
I think I'm ready.
Okay.
Hello, I'm William.
I'm Lex.
And we are Dead Gentry.
Can you hand me those gloves in
Yes,
case
I
I want to handle some things as well? Yay. Are these really dirty right now? The hard thing about appraiser's gloves is the constant battle to keep them clean.
Yes.
So, trinket boxes.
These thingies here?
Yeah, not the glass birds. Right. Those are just there to be our friends for the purpose of the video.
They're chaperoning.
Yeah, they're watching over the trinket boxes. But desirable. Lots of people collect trinket boxes. Yeah. I'm not going to discuss every single box here in depth. Some of them are worth more than others. Obviously, they're made of different materials, a lot of different time periods going on here, a lot of different countries going on here, regions in those countries. So I'm gonna focus mostly, I think, on Limoges, because Français, Limoges.
One of those.
And murder pronunciation the entire time.
No, I think you got it.
Well, we'll see. But that's what people mostly ask about.
Gotcha.
Because when it comes to fine porcelain trinket boxes, that region does produce the best in the world, like bar none, and they're the most popular, they're the most well-known, and we get a lot of questions about it. So, Limoges. Most small pieces, I have two small pieces here. This, there's a blue and white, yeah. And then this one as well, a little bit older with the metal work here. That's a much more contemporary piece.
This one is?
Yeah, and you see how that's actually, I don't believe it's hand painted. I believe that's transfer wear.
Yeah, it looks like it.
So when you're talking about Limoges, one of the things to recognize, yeah, you can show the stamp. Careful of that lid, because they pop right off. So you almost want to take it off and then flip them. But that's a nice stamp. Very gold. But it's an area. It's not a specific manufacturer. Right. I think that's the most common error is even people who are just beginning collections, they think they're collecting from a specific creator or pottery studio or something. And that's not what it is. It's an entire region in France. So there are about 30 different fine porcelain trinket box manufacturers that come out of France over, 100 years.
I think that's helpful because, I hear the term a lot.
Yeah.
And you start to get used to it being, you're thinking it's a company, but it's a whole region.
It's a whole region. Yeah. So generally, these two little pieces, $20 to $50. The older one with the metal work, that gold and the hand-painted top there, the pink, that's going to be worth more, obviously, than the very contemporary transfer wear piece, which there is not much of any hand painting there, and there isn't any metal work, and it's not older. Whereas that pretty pink one, this is when you're looking at the metal work with Limoges. First of all, you want the most exquisite glaze on these porcelain objects and the purest porcelain. So it should be bright white, clean porcelain, just like you see here, an exquisitely translucent glaze. And then this metalwork, see how fine the little clasp is, this beautiful little French daisy. And the banding is thin and it's affixed to the porcelain itself incredibly well. You're not looking at glue, you're not looking at thick metalwork. You're looking at a very fine hinge, very detailed, ornate. It's almost like a little metal ribbon.
Try to get it up.
Yeah, you're trying. I'm blocking your screen while I'm talking. Okay. But that's always going to be worth more. That's higher quality. And when you're trying to appraise these objects, when you're coming up with evaluations, those are what that's condition matters. And of course, the object itself, the execution of the object matters. And when it comes to true Limoges, it's amazing. Limoges, by the way, has an S on the end when written. I think that showed on that little stamp there. It probably shows on both stamps. But it's pronounced Limoges as if it doesn't have an S. But if you come across a mark without an S, that's not, that's not authentic. There are so many fakes. Yeah. So many. And the values between the authentic piece and anything that isn't authentic, massive range, massive price difference. So authentic stamps are worth much, much more. The more desirable shapes as well, so more uncommon shapes. There's little purses that clasp at the top There's little stoves that are hand painted, have little dishes on top where the hinge top opens up, typewriters, chests of drawers, steamboats, Eiffel Towers, figure topped pieces like lambs, frogs, little cows, kittens sleeping in beds. You might find that. Teapots, bird houses that open up. All of those things are going to be closer to the $100 price point inside of the lesser valued Limoges, somewhat more modern pieces. They're still going to be worth more than the $20 to $50 range of the very common shapes, the very more contemporary pieces. You step back a little bit and you have the more uncommon shapes, they're worth a little bit more. But the older, very fine pieces can be worth hundreds to thousands. So if you think you're looking at an antique, take the time to get it appraised and evaluated correctly. These are just more like general rules for what you usually find available on the market. This is what most people come across, these more common shapes, and then the slightly more valuable figurals.
You see them all, I mean, as we just see here, just the 12 or so here, they're all shapes and sizes, these colors, just the variety of which are kind of mind-blowing.
Yes, in the trinket boxes themselves, So these are not all French, and these are not all Limoges, but absolutely, they come in so, like, it's so diverse. Pretty much everywhere produces these, especially as a tourist or like an object of art. So they're kind of everywhere. Again, older pieces, whatever country it's coming from, if it's older, it's likely worth more to a collector. But modern pieces are pretty highly valued too. Just to get back to just finishing Limoges, try to talk about them a little bit more. So there's modern pieces that are like Disney pieces. Like there was a Winnie, there was like a tiger jumping on Winnie the Pooh's belly that I saw not long ago, where the lid had the figures. And that was $400 in May of this year. So that's a much more modern piece, and yet highly desirable to collectors. Rochards tend to go for more, especially if they're painted in 24 karat gold instead of just detailed or highlighted in 24 karat gold. And you'll know them, they look gold. They look entirely gold. But also just in general, the Rochards tend to be more desirable. Everyone wants at least one piece, one hand-painted Rochard in a Limoges collection. So they tend to go for a little bit more. So $60 to $100, even if it is a more common shape and more modern. So it's not always as if, even with the small modern ones, that they're not worth money. I don't want to suggest that. It really depends on the piece.
Well, this is also a kind of a collectible that, you know, besides for just looking for the ones that are worth money, you can collect what you like, right? Because there's all kinds of colors and sizes and shapes that you don't have to limit yourself to certain areas, so you can get into anything you want. And then also look for the high value ones as well, because they'll be out there.
Yeah, some people try to create collections of just high value pieces. But others, like you said, will go for certain themes, like maybe all purses, or certain regions or certain countries, like all pieces from Portugal.
Right.
Or, you know, maybe they have family background in a specific region. They might head towards that. So, I mean, the modern pieces of Limoges, there's so many. There's sneakers. You can get little sneaker trinket boxes. Beehives covered in these like really sweet little charming bees. I saw at Alice in Wonderland. Again, a lot of these themed pieces, like kind of like Winnie the Pooh, like the Disney, very desirable. That was $170 in May for like a Queen of Hearts. It was very modern. Not, I would say, all that well executed, but still very desirable because of its theming.
Yeah.
So, and of course, as I said, a couple hundred is not that much for one of these. That's considered very low on the price range for a genuine Limoges. The older pieces can be worth quite a bit more. So each piece is usually signed. Sometimes they're numbered, not always. Again, they come from all different manufacturers in that region of France. So it is important to be able to identify the marks accurately. The great thing is you can find all the marks online. There are so many Limoges collectors, credible websites.
It's helpful.
They are really sharing those marks, and they'll share the years of manufacture, whether the mark should be in green ink or, you know, red or black ink, what year that means, what depending on the color of a mark or the way the mark is done. Excuse me. So that's very helpful. So you don't have to memorize all the marks. As I said, there's about 30 producers in the region over quite an expansive time, but those lists are available for you to look up and then try to authenticate your mark and, you know, see who made it and when it was made. These are things you can find out. When you're looking at, if you like turn over that older pink one, it's probably gonna say, yeah, Palma on the bottom. Oh, no, that's a different piece. No, the pink Limoges, this one. So if you look closely, can you see? Yeah, see where it says Palma? So it looks like Point A Le Main if you're American, right? If you're speaking in English, and then the Dumas France. So the Palma means painted by hand. Now that's a good mark. That means the entire piece is painted by hand. If it says decorative, that means it's decorated by hand. So it's not fully hand painted, but it has some hand decoration. And then there's another one, which is, it looks like, if you're English and you were just reading it, it looks like Rahos or something, but it's Rahoy o Sama, which means it's only highlighted by hand. So out of those three, you want the fully hand painted, which is worth more. And then maybe the partially hand painted, worth a little bit less, but avoid the, the Rojo o Sama, because that's only highlighted.
Right.
It's my French.
French is hard.
Well, it's just I haven't brushed up on it in a long time, so I'm trying to remember the word. But you will see that. So that's what that means. Hopefully that helps people. And it should always say Limoges. It should always say France on the bottom. It's certifying that you actually have, a handcrafted piece that is from Limoges. If you see, Rochard, Palma, that's a good one. That particular artist is desirable, that creator, that manufacturer. Authentic Limoges pieces, as I said to you, always have the delicate metalwork. So if you're not quite sure if you can tell how exquisite a translucent glaze is or how pure porcelain looks, this is called hard paste porcelain, by the way, when it's produced in Limoges. You can look at the metal. And if the metalwork is good, that's a step in the right direction. So I almost look at the metal first when I'm dealing with Limoges pieces and trying to evaluate them and determine when they're from.
Yeah, this metalwork is exquisite, especially for how small it is.
There are other regions
rivets,
too.
Almost.
Yeah, the little pretty little bands of metal, and it's the way it's adhered so well, but you're not gonna see glue or anything bizarre like that.
Yeah, it's very pretty, very delicate.
Sevres, they produce porcelain as well. It's just not as with the Rouen, but they're not as well known, and generally they're not as desirable as the Limoges region.
So that's a region?
Yeah, in France. There's other places that produce porcelain in France, but
I'm not fully up on my French regions.
Yeah, sorry. That's kind of why I'm trying to spell it out loud for people who might not recognize the French pronunciation. There are the regions that produce porcelain. Limoges tends to be the most desirable, and by far, I mean, contestably, you could ask anyone, the most famous for many, many years. So they started producing what's called hard paste porcelain in 1771. There's an ingredient that you need to make porcelain. So, they're near the Great River in France, and they had the clay, but it wasn't until 1768 that they found the kaolin, which was this ingredient that they needed, and it was very close to the area, and then they were able to add it in and make very fine products of porcelain. So a comme de toi. So the Count of Artois would be the English way if you were trying to, or it might say Comte de Artois, right? Would be how you would Google search it.
Right.
Comme de toi. He actually purchased one of the early Limoges manufacturers, and then later King Louis, one of the Louis. Which Louis? XVI? Latin numerals. One of the Louis purchased the manufacturer from the Count of Artois, from the Comte d'Artois, and was going to create, I think, statue work or something, filigree for one of the major places he was trying to decorate, but that never like actually happened. But it didn't matter because at that point now it was so famous because the Calm had it, and then he had sold it to a king, and so that's kind of when you talk about why is Limoges better than these other regions. Well, one, they created the best products. They just did, and then you have this incredible historical background attached to it.
So not to confuse the viewers, I'm just gonna show some of the other ones as we're talking here.
Oh yeah, we can start talking about the other things too, but so when you're looking at Limoges marks, it could be Haviland, it could be Royal Limoges, it might say Bernardad, it might say Elite Works, it might say Marshall Reardon is one of the real big ones, Charles Thoreau. They're around 30 of them. So if it doesn't say exactly what you expect it to say, there are different producers from that region.
Right.
And it's like if you see a crown, that's probably a good sign. Because that's going to be the Royal Crown mark. If you see a circle with a star, that's a good mark generally. I don't see them on fakes too often, but these are all different producers. You can go search all of this online. There are so many fakes, and it really does matter. So I don't know. You have to look into it. You really do when you're dealing with Limoges. And everyone thinks they're ring boxes or trinket boxes. They were originally designed, they were lovers' gifts. So if you were the Comme de Trois and you wanted to give your lover a special present to keep in their rooms, perhaps in, the royal palace where you're situated or something, they would have a small love poem or a lock of their hair. Okay. So kind of very little romantic things, which now we always call just trinket boxes as if they were always meant to hold rings and such.
Right.
But no, if you saw the amount of jewelry that was in the French royal courts, you would understand that something this small would never be useful to any of them. So, and again, if you're looking at Limoges, very fine older pieces. People have asked me specifically about Limoges. That's why I'm focusing so much on it, just in kind of in a vague way. Anything with hand-painted historical figures, say like Napoleon, the larger pieces like on a vase, Napoleon hand-painted onto a vase, those can be worth thousands to tens of thousands. So if you think you're dealing with an older object and it's very well executed and it seems very desirable, take the time to go get it appraised, take the time to go get it insured. You need to know how much it's worth. They can be worth quite a bit.
Good tip.
Yeah, I don't want to make it seem like all Limoges makes is trinket box. They make china sets, right? Like you can get all fine china. You can get a whole tea service or dinner service. It's not as if they only make trinket boxes. There are other things that they create. Yeah, okay. So that's hopefully enough on that. So we can look at the other pieces a little bit. So when it comes to trinket boxes, just overall, Limoges is wonderful. Cloisonné. The little inlay with the fine metal wire soldered work. I don't have any cloisonné on the table, but those can be worth quite a bit in trinket boxes.
Right.
Silver, like Indian silver antique trinket boxes, especially sterling silver pieces. Again, the older, the more well executed, can be worth quite a bit. Antique Chinese brass and copper. Sometimes it'll be one metal overlaying the other metal in an older Chinese piece and a primitive piece.
So they don't have to be porcelain.
No, like I think I have a small metal piece here that's considered a trinket box. But they don't always come in clay. They don't always come in earthenware. They don't always come in porcelain. They don't always come in metal. They come in many different things depending on the region of manufacture, the country of manufacture, the time period they're coming from. So, and some of the older pieces can be worth, again, they don't all have to be from France. Like an Indian sterling silver piece, a very fine cloisonné piece, a very old Chinese primitive copper piece can be worth thousands. So when it comes to trinket boxes, keep an eye out, be aware, and don't always just focus on Limoges-style or Limoges, like porcelain or fine bone china looking ceramics, because there are other types of trinket boxes out there. Okay, so this one, did you show this one?
A little bit, not too much.
This is a relish container. Isn't that amazing? Right. So you know how I was talking about the Limoges used to hold like a lock of your lover's hair? Yeah. Flip the lid over instead of the base. And there you go. See, all the information on that one is hidden in the lid. Isn't that adorable?
That's odd.
But again, so you will find pieces like this popping up in a trinket box collector's collection. They're actually quite fun, quite pleasant. This one has sporting birds on the front.
Right.
So you would likely find this in a more hunting or masculine themed collection.
I mean,
But
that's odd.
it's actually not that odd when it comes to trinket boxes.
Yeah.
There's snuff boxes, which look like trinket boxes, right? So all these, when we just talk about small boxes,
Yeah.
you could have salt containers, you could have tobacco containers, you could have relish containers, or you could have things that are purely decorative, meant to hold maybe one ring. It's still going to be considered a trinket box moving forward in a lot of ways, especially when people collect them. And that's a very well done one.
So they're mostly slightly bigger than a pill box, you would think.
Yeah, pill boxes tend to be smaller.
Yeah, more like this size.
Like if you look at Stratton pill boxes, yeah, that one's a pill box.
Okay.
I would call that a pill box. It's small enough. On the more modern pill boxes, you can look for the white plastic insert. See, yeah, there you go. See that?
Yeah.
That's kind of one of the ways you can tell when it's a pill box, but still a trinket box for you. So,
makes sense.
and then you have like, this is a very modern chintz, not really done all that well. The problem with transferware a lot of the time, when it's not, and especially on a piece like this, where it's not being the applique isn't done very finely. See how it's like scratching off in places and rubbing?
Yeah.
But a lot of people love chintz. So as far, like, that's why I put it on the table. As far as a pattern, very popular right now. People are just going after those kind of more English tea rose.
That's exactly what it is.
Heavily ornate patterns, yeah.
Pretty colors.
And then here, the little blue flowware, that's a Takahashi, this one. So I know that because we're lucky enough on this one that it has its little gold foil stamp in place. So Takahashi, meaning high bridge in Japanese. Last name, very famous San Francisco manufacturer and retailer. I actually went to one of the Takahashi trading shops, one of the large ones in San Francisco when I was attending San Francisco State. I got to go to one and they had everything. Yeah. I mean, it was 3 stories tall. It was huge. They had jade lions. They had vases. They had guitars. They had firecrackers. They had, like, it's just the extent of goods inside of the place was breathtaking. It was like, I don't know. It was a field trip. It was amazing. Going into the shop felt like a field trip. It was incredible. But yeah, very famous background. We're Californian. We adore California history, and that Takahashi history, very important to California. So they were in Jackson Square, Union Square, Ghirardelli Square. So again, you can kind of tell how kind of important it was. So they traded in dry goods, finally crafted, Japanese imports, ceramics, as I said, like musical instruments, pretty much everything.
Are they still around? Do you know?
Not now, but they were like right up until, I want to say like 2007 they sold their last, or 2010 they transferred hands out of the family or something like that. Don't quote me on that. But it was in the early 2000s. But they were still producing, like they were still selling. So they sell import, like finely made Japanese goods, and then they import them and then sell them.
That makes sense.
So, and then husband, wife couple, she got a degree from UC Berkeley. He moved to Oakland in the 1930s, I believe. He became a journalist around that area. And then with the World War II, and we've discussed this in other Japanese ceramic American California heritage. They were put into internment camps.
It's awful.
When they were released from the internment camps, a credit to the history and tradition of the citizens of this country and what they go through, survive, and then rebuild. They moved to San Francisco and they opened Takahashi Trading Goods. So, very cool. 1945-ish?
Yeah.
Because of the end of the war.
Yeah.
So that's a very cool little piece just for, it's connected to that history in San Francisco and their family history. And it's just kind of
blue
beautiful.
and white's always a good color combo.
Flowware is just amazing, isn't it? So that's a fun one. That's more modern. And you can tell they have older marks. They have ink marks from the older, like 1950s, 1960s production lines that they had. This one has that little gold foils. That's much more contemporary. I think this is Portuguese. This is pretty. I'd have to look a little bit closer. This one I think you showed earlier. So here you go, Japan, right? So again, kind of connected to that history in a weird kind of way. And look at the difference in styles. This is being produced in an English style.
Right.
This is being produced in a Holland Dutch style, and they're both coming out of Japan.
Right.
So it's just what was popular at that time that people wanted to purchase.
Yeah.
Those are the designs that would be created and the styles that would be replicated. That the made and occupied Japan marks. There's collectors that will just collect things with those marks. So you might see a collection of a trinket box, a teacup, a cigar box, all with those marks.
Great way to date the pieces.
I don't know. Can you see this? This is hard. Your job is hard holding these things up. See that? Portuguese.
Yes.
This one I believe is West German. Yeah. So a lot of the German marks. There are so many. The older Prussian pieces can be quite beautiful. This one you can tell is a little bit newer.
It's so pretty.
This one's actually hand painted throughout. Or is that transfer work? I can't see from here. I'd have to pick up a loop and look.
I'll look at the loop.
But if it's hand painted throughout, this one has these charming little legs. So it is more modern. But again, if it's executed, it's transfer wear. So that's going to mean it's worth less than a hand painted piece. And of course, also worth less than a older piece that may be, Prussian.
Not worthless, but worth less.
No, it's still beautiful.
Yeah.
It's a great little piece to add to a collection of trinket boxes. But when you're looking to evaluate pieces for yourself, or maybe you're a reseller, head towards hand painted.
Yeah.
Head towards the older, U.S. Prussia.
So the transfer.
Not USSR, but
Right.
Prussia.
You could see, obviously, well, it's kind of hard to see here, but the dots especially in the pink, you'll notice.
It's hard to pick up on the camera, but I think people know what we mean, right?
Yeah.
When it has those little dots and it's not hand painted. I believe this one is Italian. I want to say that's a hand painted Italian. That's actually pretty. What does it say?
It is Italian.
Oh yeah, friends.
Yeah.
So again, pretty. You notice how the clay is so different. Look at the darker and the way the glaze is applied.
Right.
It's thicker, but it's very shiny. It's a very modern glaze, but it's thick.
This almost looks like a shrunk down like soup bowl.
It's kind of adorable.
The glaze is what you would see on
a thick tureen. Yeah.
Exactly. Tureen, that's the word.
It is. It's cool.
I like it.
It is. I like all the tiny little dots.
Yeah.
This is a tourist piece. So a lot of these, whether they're older or newer, are tourist pieces. So when you travel to the region, you would pick up a piece like this.
It makes sense because they're so small. You can put them in. You can buy them, transport them pretty easily.
Yeah, easy to put in your luggage and bring home.
You're not gonna buy a harp.
And they're fun, especially if you travel to different countries.
Yeah.
So that one's French. I can tell from here because it says Arlay on it, and that's what Arlay is very kind of famous for. Those beautiful that white stone that almost looks like travertine that the Romans used, and then if you travel there, the architecture in the region of like beautiful white stone motifs everywhere, and architecture created from it, and then adorned in silver. So again, tourist piece trying to show off that region's beauty and unique style.
Right.
That Arlay has become very popular lately with our artists friends, and a lot of interest in Arlay and living there and traveling there lately. Is that all of them? What else is there? I think we did pretty good.
I'm going with that one.
That one I love. Isn't that beautiful? See the characters on the bottom there?
Excuse me, I don't know.
I have no idea what they
North or
say.
south?
I can tell you this is a more modern piece, again, based on the glaze.
I think that's right. Is this right?
And that is not a hand-painted signature. Is it? That's like a stamp-applied signature.
Like a stamp.
Yeah.
Let me see.
So a little more modern. But that one's beautiful for the colors. So it's not just blue flowware.
Yeah.
It's done in so many of these different. That's a very fine little piece.
It's pretty.
And that one is hand painted.
Yeah.
So again, even more modern. If maybe you don't have a lot of money to buy an antique right now, if you're traveling to a region, maybe you're in a part of Asia, maybe you're in a part of France, a part of Italy, buy the piece that's hand painted. Go into the little shop, take the time to talk to the person.
Right.
When you get home, you can write the name of the shop owner in a little slip of paper, put it in there with the year. It's going to be very inexpensive because it's going to be a tourism piece, but if it's hand painted, over time it's going to be worth more. And if it's a higher quality, like if you're in RLA, get the one made of the white travertine looking stone.
Right.
Don't get like the back glaze transfer weird one that just has like RLA printed on the front or something like that. So good little overview. I really like this little Portuguese piece. This is actually very finely done. You see this?
Yeah.
This is a hand painted piece. And again, more
The
modern.
gold or yellow is just pretty.
And
Just
it's
against the blue.
beautifully well executed. So again, just goes to show every country in the world, every region, all sorts of materials.
Yeah.
Hopefully that helps people a little bit, especially when it comes to like Limoges evaluation. I did give some monetary evaluations for people to know the value of things. Thank you so much, everybody.
Like and subscribe if
William
you can.
always says like and subscribe because I always forget to. We hope this helps. Cheers.
Cheers.